And we are live. Good morning and welcome to Venture Houston 2021's panel on Hardtech Innovation, Material Science, the material impact of Hardtech on the next wave of innovation. My name is Wobi Ofori, the purveyor of perspective, principal of 360 Approach, and this morning's moderator. And joining me this morning are four innovators making waves on the Houston scene. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage, Vanessa Weich, Deputy Director at NASA's Johnson Space Center, Adam Sharkawi, co-founder and managing partner of Boston-based venture capital firm Material Impact, Gaurav Chakrabarti, co-founder and CEO of Houston-based venture-backed biotech startup firm Solugen, who are makers of high-performance chemicals from plant-derived substitutes, and Nick Radford, founder and CEO of Houston Mechatronics, arguably the coolest marine robotics startup on the planet. Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
How's everybody this morning?
Excellent. Looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. So am I. Before we get started, let me just give a little quick guidance to our audience. Listen, I'd love for you to join in the conversation and participate with us. There are three ways that you can do that. One, let us know that you're here. So let us know you're here in the chat, and also let us know where you're from. I'm curious as to where people are tuning in from. Also, if you have any questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A. I will try to get to as many as I can during our time together. And finally, we're going to have a few pop-up poll questions happen during the time together this morning. So keep an eye out for that. So without further ado, let's get down to business. Okay, so we have the title of our session this morning is Hardtech and its material impact on the next wave of innovation. So what is this next wave of innovation? Vanessa, Adam, let's start off there and clue us into what do you think is powering that wave? What is it made of, and where is it going? So Vanessa, we'll start with you. Vanessa? We are unable to hear you, Vanessa. Okay, we're having a little technical challenge with Vanessa's mic. Adam, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
All right. Well, let's first define Hardtech, which is often synonymous with deep tech, tough tech, frontier tech. In broadest brushstrokes, these are technologies that are building products based on science and engineering, and they have a transformational potential. So unlike other types of technologies which may, let's say, facilitate the possible, deep and hard technologies expand what is in the realm of the possible. So the first question, are we seeing a Hardtech wave? Emphatically, yes, we are. Over the last 5 to 7 years, investments that are categorized as hard and deep tech have been growing at about a 22% CAGR. Last few years, about a little bit over $60 billion annually have been invested in deep tech. And I'm sure we can get into why that is later. But my headline response to what's contributing to this hard tech wave is simple. Over the last 30 years or so, let's say from the 1990s to the present day, advances in computing and networking have allowed, for software technologies to facilitate our lives and enable new business models. But let's keep in mind that it was deep tech in the 40s through 90s that allowed for all this to be possible through advances in computer chips, microelectronics, telecommunication advances, the infrastructure of the internet, GPS, the Human Genome Project, all of which are hard tech. So, now that software is caught up, we see that the next major advances that are required to solve real and large scale problems will need another deep tech wave. And while a lot of the technologies that have helped facilitate certain parts of our lives with, virtual capabilities, at the end of the day, we still live in a physical world. And most of the virtual advances have to be translated into physical embodiments in a physical world.
I mean, I fully agree. I mean, until we get to the ghost in the shell proposition, wherein our consciousnesses are uploaded into computers, I think that solving problems in the physical world is still important. Vanessa, have we gotten your audio situation taken care of? Can you? No, we're still. Oh man, I am so sorry. Okay, let's see if we can't work on that in the background. And so. Garb, now you as an innovator on that, surfing that wave, what really excites you about where this wave is going?
Yeah, so I think specifically for me, decentralization is a concept that software has taken over with crypto, and you saw the most recent shenanigans with Reddit and GameStop. What that implies is that there's a fundamental cultural shift happening in which we think about ownership of these things. When we think about hardware, we are now finally in that era where there can be decentralized production or decentralized manufacturing that can allow these cultural shifts to happen faster. So if you look at what happened in the steel industry is a perfect example, right? The mini mill, right? First there was Bethlehem Steel, massive steel manufacturer. You have to ship steel everywhere. But then Nucor comes along and says, hey, what if we decentralize the production of steel and make these mini mills? Now, if you look at the NASDAQ, well, you don't see Bethlehem Steel on there anymore, but you see the Nucors, you see the ArcelorMittals. The same thing is happening, I think, with more intense hard tech realities like robotics, like chemicals, like biology. These things are becoming more decentralized, and that is how you can democratize and actually empower communities and cultures to rapidly advance. And so that's where my focus has been, specifically in the chemical space, is how do we use advances in biotech, advances in engineering to do decentralized chemicals production. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's such a big opportunity in this hard tech space.
Now, I mean, that's really interesting. And I want to key in on the big opportunity because, again, a lot of people, but whether or not those problems are solvable, and more importantly, whether they have commercial viability as ventures, I think people tend to question. So Nick, what do you see as when somebody's looking in at that, and people are right now in the audience and are looking at us and saying, okay, here are some people who are actually in it. What were the things that got you excited about being in it, and what excites you about where things are going? So what are the opportunities that you see?
Well, I think globally it's the barrier to entry, which makes it an intriguing investment if I was an investor. I mean, if you look at software related companies, and you just start with maybe what capital was deployed in 2019, about $167 billion, of which 60% of it went to software companies. 32% of it went to consumer facing goods, healthcare, financial, and 8%, the leftover remaining, went to industrial technology or the hard tech side. And I think it's a combination of they're hard to evaluate, longer exits, usually tougher to scale. But to me, that's kind of what makes them a gold mine. It's an underserved market for sure, because I think we're tough to evaluate. And I live on the front lines of this every day, and I'm pretty vocal about it, right? I mean, I live this. We don't invest in hardware related companies. And to me, I just think it's such a hugely missed opportunity. I mean, in general, software companies pretty easy to evaluate. Usually, let's get a bunch of people to subscribe to something. Growth occurs after that. But I think that's that the missed opportunity is that in order for us to, I think Adam said it best, we're going to have to get into the world and do something, right? And that next wave of innovation is specifically interacting with the environment, in my opinion. Maybe the digital revolution, the information age, was the ubiquitous manipulation of the virtual world. But now we need to uncover what the ubiquitous manipulation of the physical world is, and we need to make those investments toward that. And what Garub was saying around decentralization, I think that provides this incredible network effect as it relates to hardware now. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to do something, and of course, there's a bunch of software behind it. I mean, no one argues that. But for me, that's where I plant my flag. Is that maybe what the best financial return or the easiest financial return isn't always the one that benefits society the most. And the hard tech is going to be that underlining revolution, in my opinion, for societal benefit.
I hear you. I hear you. I think we've got Vanessa's audio. I think we've got a solution for Vanessa's audio. Vanessa, can you speak? And let's see if we can hear you. No, we still can't hear you. Unfortunately, unmuted. Okay, try again. Okay, still can't hear you. See if we can go in through the phone. Sorry about this, Vanessa. Really sorry about this. But we still can't hear you just yet. Okay, we're still having our production team work this out. Apologies to everybody about that. So let's. I want to throw this back over to Adam, and I want to key in on something specific that Nick said about hard tech being hard to evaluate. So this is what you're investing in now. And so how do you go about evaluating the value proposition of a hard tech venture? And I think one of the challenging things that a lot of people run into is, where is it on that development timeline, right? So are we at the pioneer stage where this is, cutting edge frontier, stuff that is going to be difficult to find what the commercial applications are for it, or is it somewhere else? So give us a little insight into how you go about that process.
Sure. So, at Material Impact, we kind of work backwards. We look at, some large problem statements, and we ask ourselves, what are the rate limiters that are, throttling progress in that space? Whether it's, big problems in food scarcity or water scarcity, or certain aspects of energy, transportation, and so forth. And then, based on that, we look for very product-focused solutions that are squarely, making an impact in those spaces. And usually, we'll before we even look for those kinds of solutions, we'll have a thesis that we've developed as to what are the components of the solution that we're looking for. So I would say it's very thesis and product-focused. And guided by those things. So I understand that Vanessa may be back online here, so I'll keep my response short to make sure that we get a chance to hear from Vanessa. But high level will be, we're very investment thesis, solution, product focused in evaluating these kinds of technologies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. That's good. Vanessa, let's see if we can't get you in on the conversation.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey. All right. See, one way or the other. See, this is so, and it's so interesting too, because this is such a Apollo 13 kind of thing. Well done, everybody working on this. Houston had a problem, but we overcame. So Vanessa, let's jump in and let's talk a little bit about NASA and NASA's role in this new wave.
Awesome. So we'll be, are you getting a echo?
Yeah, there's an echo on my side. I'm going to mute and just try muting your phone is fine, but.
Okay, let's see. Can you? Going off. Echo. Hold on, one second. Let me do something.
I think that did it. I think that did it. So do we still have your phone audio? There we go. We're live, everybody. Yeah. This is entrepreneurship, right? This is finding a problem and overcoming. So go ahead, Vanessa. We hear you.
Well, and glad that my 2 engineering degrees were able to help. Okay. So, I would like to share in terms of the new wave, if you couch it that way. Right now in aerospace, especially in human spaceflight, which is what we do here at NASA's Johnson Space Center, and what the city of Houston, we're known for that. But the new innovations that have come from commercialization. And right now, today, we again have the capability to launch Americans from American soil as a result of that, new innovation. What Elon Musk has done in terms of reusability, bringing down launch costs. So for NASA, then that allows us to purchase that as a service. Instead of us owning the system, someone else owns it, then he's able to go get other customers. And so it builds a market, right? And so that's the beginning. Boeing, of course, will be coming online as well. We have right here in Houston other companies that are taking off and doing commercialization. There's a company called Intuitive Machines that is actually doing a commercial payload services for the moon. And so they're going to be building a lander that's going to go to the moon, scheduled in 2021, and go and get some resources that, we'll bring back and we'll do discoveries on. But then it opens that system, which will be owned by that company, up to other customers. And so this innovation has been taking off, recently, and it's allowing us, it's a win-win, right? Because NASA then has other people that are part of exploration. And as they go out and they develop and do more, then that allows us to do more because we leverage together. So it's a very exciting time for innovation in space, not just in what we consider to be low Earth orbit, but also going further out into the solar system. But we have technologies that are on board the International Space Station, looking at 3D printing of tissue for organ transplant, fiber optics, so many things that we're able to do. So it's just a very exciting time, Ruby, and I'm glad that you included us as a part of the discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think, again, it's really interesting for me anyway, because the whole space program, I think for a lot of us, especially for those of us, Gen Xers growing up, space and space program was a big part of what inspired us as to what technology actually was and what it meant, right? So the things that we saw, rocket ships launching, big machines, this was inspirational. And Nick and I were having a conversation about this, and we were watching, the same shows about machines, and then you got to see NASA and people doing this stuff. Still one of my favorite movies of all time is The Right Stuff. And so I think that the role that NASA has played historically has been very important, but I'm so impressed too with the changes that NASA has made. I mean, probably maybe forced to have made, but is making also in shifting its role in how it supports that ongoing innovation, like you said, especially with a lot of commercial partners. And that was another very important thing that Steve Case talked about, the value of partnerships, and talking about the third wave and how that was going to factor in. So continuing on, I want to move us to something that's really, I think, top of mind for a lot of people who are innovating in hard tech, but go to a lot of these conferences or are in the ecosystem and run into, let's say, a little bit of software bias. And Nick talked a little bit about this, and that is, I want us to let's consider software ventures and hard tech ventures as asset classes, just for the sake of conversation here. And we've all heard the common reason some investors say that hard tech ventures are less attractive as an asset class. It's too much money, too much time required to determine viability. And so we touched on that a little bit with that, but I want to spend a little bit more time on that and say, what is the real story there? Because we've talked about opportunity, but if there is this bias out there toward, software is really where software is more de-risked. I don't like that term, but that's the term, right? De-risked. Let's talk about what people might do to overcome some of the resistance to hard tech investment and hard tech innovation? So let's start with you, Nick.
Sure. Well, funding is the lifeblood of every company, right? It doesn't matter if it's software, hardware, or whatever. Just continuing on my theme, I think software companies do see a lot of uplift because of the future investability that is perceived in later rounds. So the challenge for hard tech is how do you keep accessing the capital required to grow the business? And so I think we're starting to see different mechanisms come into play. There were 80 SPACs in 2020, right? That was a 50% increase over 2019. And SPACs are an excellent way to take some of that private feeling, raising money and do it on the public markets. And they are a good mechanism for hard tech companies that have these troubles of, how exactly do we evaluate this, a little bit longer time to exit. So it's all about the funding mechanisms available to people. Just like the stats I said earlier, there's a fraction. I mean, even though Adam is correct, it is growing, but it's still a fraction of the available capital deployed on the private markets. So to me, it's like, how do we look for partnership mechanisms as well? But it's all about how you garner that funding. And so I think corporates have a special role to play in the investability of hard tech. They're not completely motivated by only financial opportunities or the financial returns. And so corporates may be partnered with institutionals could really help provide that stability and later round financing for hard tech companies. But in short, it's how do you continue to draw and attract the capital required to grow the business?
Right. Garb, what's your take? Because you're out there, you've raised capital, you're venture backed. What was it that helped you? First of all, did you run into any of that kind of, hey, you're not asset light kind of thing? Did you run into any of that?
So we've raised about $100 million at this point, and we are planning to go public very soon. But I think the thing that we learned was, yes, as a whole, if you look at the distribution of money, a lot of it goes to software. But if you look at it kind of distributed out by who's the top investors, right? The Founders Fund, the Blackstones of the world, what are they investing in? So if you look at that distribution of software versus hardware, whatever you want to call it, there's a disproportionate bias for these top funds to focus on hardware. However, this looked very different 10 years ago. So what that tells me is there's a reason the Founders Fund and the Sequoias of the world are concentrating positions in this space, because there's an opportunity, right? And now what we're seeing is, I think people will start catching on to that. So my hunch is that from what I've seen with Founders Fund's an investor, Blackstone's an investor, Temasek's of the world's an investor in Decentralization, I am seeing concentration into what we can see as what does the next 20 to 50 years look like for real like long-term funds. Obviously, like there are people who want that quick arbitrage opportunity in software,
right?
Apps and whatnot, but that's not lasting. You don't create a lasting institution that way. And so I think I haven't had any pushback with respect to software versus hardware. I would argue this is a unique time for hardware companies to go out and raise from the top venture capitalists in the world versus mediocre to low grade venture capitalists.
Wow. I think hopefully that's really encouraging for some people out there. Adam, now you're a relatively new fund, right? Although you have a substantial amount of assets under management. So for you, I think the fund is 3 years old or so. So for you, did you find any greater difficulty in raising that fund when you said, I'm going to do a 100% hard tech focus?
No, we were probably on the early end of that wave. So I would like to think that we were really bringing to light the criticality of deep tech, hard tech before it was cool and fashionable. But nonetheless, I would say, I think Nick and Gaurav, really helped illustrate a few different angles to the story of these as asset classes versus software. Let me add a couple of thoughts to that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I think there are many vectors to resolve here. So, first, deep tech is traditionally thought of as requiring deep pockets. And that may generally be true as compared to software apps or incremental software technologies that are not necessarily, it's not necessarily true compared to software technologies that are built on multiple technology stacks or that are aspiring to solve really large problems. They also require pretty deep pockets. So I would say, from that perspective, they're on more comparable footing. Secondly, the US government investing in resourcing innovation as a whole has been steadily dropping, both as a percent of the economy and compared to other nations, frankly. So, back from the mid 60s when we were spending closer to 2% of GDP in R&D, we're now, less than 2/3%. So a lot of that moved over to industry, but industry, as we all know, is usually under short-term shareholder pressure, which leads to a focus on incremental type of technology investment. So all of those being said, there is a real opportunity right now for true venture investing in these critical technologies. And while all this has been the case, let's also understand that deep tech breakthroughs were potentially a while back born in kind of large corporates or government agencies. Smaller companies now have more access to knowledge, outsourced supporting capabilities. They're much more nimble with clear focus and rapid, non-matrix decision making. All of those things are pointing in the direction of venture-backed investment in hard tech. And now we just look at the examples, right? Electric cars, batteries, 3D printing, synthetic biology. So excuse the long-winded answer, but when you combine all these vectors with the needs that currently exist for hard tech solutions, you can see that there are great opportunities for deep tech venture investing. I do, though, I wouldn't be complete without saying there's a few caveats I just want to mention.
Okay.
Hard tech investing is hard. So it requires rolling up sleeves, putting some back into it, putting some elbow grease. It helps to have a very strong technical expertise that runs across multiple disciplines. And unlike software and biotech, which have fairly narrow business models, fairly well-defined business models, with hard tech and deep tech, it can run the spectrum. Every segment's different, every industry and every market's different. So you gotta be able to understand different business models and navigate those. And then secondly and finally, it requires a different mindset, right? The software tech venture playbook just doesn't work for deep tech companies, which is a topic in and of itself. So a deep tech fund model needs to be very different than a traditional software tech fund model.
Right. That's brilliant. And I want to just let everybody know, everybody should, all the participants should probably have seen that our second set of pop-up polls has been up, and it'll be interesting to see what the results of those polls are. But kind of queuing off of what you just said. Oh, here we go. This is results of the polls just coming in terms of investors. Are you an investor, entrepreneur? Okay, so investors and entrepreneurs, actually it's almost exactly even between investors and entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs, are you going to be investing in hard tech in this year? Actually, a good number. About a third are saying yes. So that's pretty interesting. So I want to. There is a question from Mark Friday, and I think this is a really good one. I want to just take a few minutes on this because it naturally dovetails off of what you were just saying, Adam. Should first-time founders focus on capital-efficient business models, which I guess could include something related to software, or swing big with hard tech? And the example that he gives is that Elon started off with a company that was capital efficient business model or two, and then went to do Tesla and SpaceX and the stuff that, required a lot of capital. So when you're basically, if you're in terms of barrier to entry, qualifications for entry, go big on Hardtech, or go to something else first, see if you could do well, and then come into Hardtech.
I mean, it's just up to the individual, right? I mean, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be fueled by so many different things. And, the kind of business you're trying to create is, of course, one of them. But there's so many dark days and sleepless nights in entrepreneurship that when you reach down, you've got to be fueled by that internal fire. And, I wouldn't suggest just go starting a business that you perceive to be an easy market to be the reason. I unfortunately, I've picked a lot of really difficult things to do, not only hard tech, but also in the ocean space. And so, what keeps me driven is really the passionate march of trying to unveil this new technological wave to marine robotics. And it has become just an absolute personal mission of mine. I'm not necessarily doing it because it's the most capital efficient way to flip a company and exit. But somebody, when I was starting HMI, somebody said, 90% of all companies fail. And I thought about it. I said, I turned it around and I was like, I think 90% of all companies succeed if they're started by people that should be starting companies in the first place. And so I think you can get through whatever business model. There are always external factors, of course, but at the end of the day, it's so much about who is running the company, not necessarily how efficient the business model might end up being.
I think I agree with that. And in just another thing to mention from this poll, which is quite interesting. One of the poll asked whether people have been discouraged from starting hard tech companies, and it's about even. In that about a third of them or half of the people who responded said yeah, and half said no. So I think that's interesting that that many as much as half have said yeah. People have discouraged me from starting a hard tech company. But I agree with you, Nick. I think you start the company that you want to run. You don't. Yeah, I think that just trying to do it from a point of view of I'm just going to try to do this over here and hope it works out and then go over there. There's just too much risk. And there's too much, there's too much work. I mean, who knows if you'll survive that? So I think, going for the one that you want to run ultimately is the one that's going to have the better chance of success.
By the way, to that point, by the way, just
sure.
to the next point, your point, Obi, we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs who were in the non-deep tech space now want to do things that are more impact focused and more meaningful, more transformational. We're seeing them now go into deep tech.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point to make, that there are people who, whether or not they started out with the intention of, I'm going to one day go over here, but the fact that people are still seeing this, and this gets back to the whole new wave, they're saying, hey, there is opportunity here. Maybe I've had some success, doing, software or something like that. But like you said, now I want to do something that is not just transformational from a digital point of view. I'd like to see that actually live out in the world and be able to see people interact with it day to day. I think that's pretty cool. I want to pivot us now to kind of bring it in and focus on the opportunities in Houston specifically. And Adam, you're in an interesting position because Material Impact is actually a portfolio fund of HX Venture Fund, which shows again how I think some of the strategy that's been employed here in Houston to try to attract more people from around the country to what's going on here in Houston is working. And so what do you think is unique about the Houston ecosystem that you see as somebody from outside the East Houston ecosystem that you think are the things that we need to continue to emphasize, focus on, and bring up in the mix?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wilby. And I'll tell you, it goes without saying that Houston, the Houston area, the greater Houston area has all the key ingredients to be an innovation hub, right? No question. It's got the capital, it's got industrial stalwarts, it's got major academic institutions that are technology rich. So I think, if we take a step back, we're all aware of the past challenges Houston has had in establishing itself as a tech hub through, efforts building the Houston Tech Center and then, Station Houston and so forth. I would really hate to see Houston dissuade itself from being a leader in renewable energy and sustainable manufacturing because it has such a strong base of traditional energy and traditional manufacturing corporates, right? So if that's the case, Houston may continue to try establishing itself as a fintech or other software hub, but I would feel that would be unfortunate. I'd love to see Houston not try to copycat into a general tech hub. Can it compete with a Silicon Valley in certain software segments? I'm sure. Can it compete with a Minneapolis, St. Paul, and San Diego in certain healthcare sectors? Maybe. But instead, it would be great for Houston to leverage its unique position as a leader in energy and space and help its constituents of more traditional energy, corporates, for example, transform into the new frontier. And it'd be great for Houston to establish itself as a space tech hub, bar none. And instead of being dissuaded to becoming, a deep tech hub, which to me would seem almost backwards, man. I would love to see Houston engage it and embrace it.
Hey, I'm right there with you. And Vanessa's smiling. Vanessa,
Yeah.
what have you got to add to that?
Yeah. So, I am on the board of Houston Exponential, right? And so we want the city to be an innovation hub. And I agree, Adam. It's around taking what you're good at and making it better. And so with regards to, space, we have NASA's Johnson Space Center, which is, I think the best and premier of all of NASA centers. But, we can expand our reach and our capability by bringing on new entrants and having them right here in Houston. Well, that's even better, right? Because we can have then a technical workforce that we can share across between industry and the government. I agree with you. I think the same thing for energy, right? It's taking what we're good at, but also going out and looking at being innovative and looking at renewables, as you said. I do think that Houston is perfect for that. We have the universities, we have educated talent pool. We're easy to get to. You can get here from anywhere. And then, we have a lot of infrastructure that's available especially for companies that want to, if they don't have, the chambers and things that we have here, they can come and test their systems here. Why, instead of them investing in that infrastructure. But Houston has that. And I think it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Nick, talent. Sometimes it's said, Houston is lacking the talent. I personally think that's rubbish. And I think that you have something to say about that.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I've actually 2 tech startups, and we don't really talk about the second one too often, but I've had to hire, lots of folks that are deeply involved in machine learning and AI as it relates to robotics and dealing with people that are experts when it comes to electric machines, and I found them all in Houston. And if every once in a while, we recruit from outside the city, but they don't have any trouble moving to it either. And so I've not struggled with staffing two ambitious technology, hard tech companies. People, you almost find that people are excited to work on something with their hands, and we can't overlook that. And it's very fulfilling to take something cradle to grave that is physical, and it's just when people say, "Oh my goodness, you live in Houston," I just want to scream, because I'm like, do you realize how deeply amazing this city is? and just take a stroll down, Post Oak Boulevard with the remodel and the shopping and the restaurants and the weather. I'm tired of hearing people tell me that the weather sucks here, because like 9 months out of the year, I think it's like California. So I just don't see it. And as we have companies that are starting to recruit more, and with some of the, I would say, sort of famous exoduses, is that a word, exoduses, that are starting to happen, Texas has no trouble attracting talent. And as a consequence, I don't think Houston will either.
I think that's brilliant. We've got just a few more minutes. Garb, I'm curious. Give us one or two key things that you think that Houston has provided for you that has allowed you to successfully grow your company that is unique to other locations in the country.
Yeah, so we started the company in 2017, and we were deciding between, should we set up, I'm from Sugar Land. I grew up here. I went to high school here. So I love this place. So keep that bias aside. But if, we were deciding between San Francisco, Houston, Austin, a few other hubs. We decided on Houston. For us, it was actually the humble nature. The culture is humble. That's at Solugen, our company. We pride people who are insanely smart, but also insanely humble. And we found that in Houston. You find these brilliant people that know exactly what to do, what to say, how to do things, but they're not going to write a blog post about how amazing they are. I love that. I absolutely love that, because what that tells me is there's no hype there, right? The problem with opening up shop in one of these coasts, and for us at least, was there was a lot of hype around what we were doing, but we didn't want that because we knew instinctually that skews incentives. When you're going from a business that's like, we were 2 people, now we're 200 people, now we're 1,000 people. In terms of what you need to do, humbleness is like the number one. This is what my opinion, but I think humbleness is the reason that Houston is so phenomenal for deep tech.
Man, that's brilliant. All of these views are brilliant. Listen, if you're an investor out there and you're tuning in this morning, you've got it now. Here is your reason to look at what's happening in the Houston scene. And so it's time for us to bring things to a close. And first, I want quick parting thoughts. Give me a quick 20 or 30 seconds on what you would like to leave with our audience today. Garb, since we'll start with you.
Just be humble. I found that's the most easy way to win, is just be nice and humble.
Right on. Be humble, Nick.
I think the cost of running a business here is one of the reasons people should be thinking about it. It's very cheap to start up a company and hire in the talent. Definitely helpful in getting things off the ground. Vanessa.
So I would say, the space economy is growing, and Houston, there's a lot of opportunity here. And so I would encourage investors to invest in Houston, and entrepreneurs to start your companies, because we got some big, bold missions. I didn't even get a chance to say that, we're going to return to the moon, and we are going to go forward to Mars with humans. So much exciting. And so that would be my parting. Just invest in Houston.
Yeah, no, so go ahead. All right, go Artemis. And Adam, wrapping it up.
And Nick said it, cradle to grave. We have an opportunity also here in the Renaissance to go grave to cradle. Take the old technologies that are stalwarts and go progressive. I'll keep it brief. As someone else has said earlier today, Houston, we have a solution, and it's called Hardtech. Let's lead the way.
Dude, that is brilliant. What a great way to end. All right, listen, thank you so much. Adam, Vanessa, Garb, Nick, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Again, Vanessa, apologies, but thank you for demonstrating persistence and perseverance in overcoming challenges, because that is truly the spirit of Houston. Also want to thank the event organizers, HX Venture Fund, Houston Exponential, Houston Angel Network, and the Rice Alliance for Technology and Entrepreneurship. And last thought is, everybody, listen, do everything that you can to survive the night, because the dawn is coming. We'll be out.
Thank you.